All right, let's dig into our second week of Isaiah. This one's going from chapter 24 to 39, and then we'll read some other, in our reading plan, we read some other books of the Bible, and then we go back to Isaiah again. Thank goodness I kind of like it breaking it up like that because Isaiah in just one read can be a lot, but as you kind of learn in the introduction to Isaiah, first Isaiah ends here at chapter 39. Chapter 40 begins kind of what we call second Isaiah. So you get this second prophet who writes in the name of Isaiah. So it's kind of why it's broken up like that. But I think it really helps because it's written differently, it speaks differently, there's something different going on. So I'm kind of glad it's broken up like that. So we're going to finish up this what we would term as first Isaiah. We're going to go 24 to 39. So let's just talk about some of these passages. Now there's a lot of judgment and redemption through what Isaiah is talking about here. So you'll see some. I felt like when I read it, there's some repeating themes. So I don't know that each chapter needs its own breakdown. Some you can pretty much glean what is kind of going on. But as we do this, I'll kind of look at maybe some questions we can ask ourselves as we read some of this and think about to maybe just kind of expand upon what we're reading. So chapter 24, it's spoken about how the whole world is now going to be laid to waste because of human transgressions, right? The humans are not following God, they're not listening to God, and it's through the breaking of the covenant with God that earth is being laid to waste, or at least what they see in their area that they're living in. Verse 16, I think is interesting. It's if you look at that 24 verse 16, it's interesting because people are praising God. They're giving God praise in this moment. But the prophet, right, the prophet Isaiah, complains that the judgment against the people has not stopped them from their transgressions. And so the prophet here, is looking around going, yeah, but you guys are still doing the same thing. Like, you're praising God, but you're still doing the same thing. And this is kind of at the heart of the issue of the people. And I think this is a theme that's kind of repeated here in this first part of Isaiah, is that people are worshiping and praising God. They're in their temples, they're doing their thing, but they're not behaving in ways that please God or the ways that God is calling them to behave. They're not doing this stuff, and very hypocritical. So again, like, how do we see this active in our spaces? How do we make choices to when we worship and when we sing the songs, when we talk about justice and we talk about doing right, we talk about loving neighbor, we talk about how do we do that well when we leave the church? Not to be hypocritical, so we're not living into that call because it's not pleasing to God. It makes our worship empty when we do that. So, I think it's something that we can glean here. 2,700 years ago, they're doing things that we hear and talk about in the church today. And people are going to continue to do this, but that's the challenge, right? That's the challenge for us when we read this and we see Israel behaving in this way. We're going, gosh, yeah, like, just follow God. Well, let's make sure we're doing it too. How do we challenge our spaces, even ourselves, to live deeper into that call? So this is where in chapter 24 they're getting to some of this. So we'll skip past 25. We'll go to 26. And this chapter has a song that is being sung. And one of the things that I think is interesting here, verse 9. Verse 9 says, when your judgments are in the earth, the inhabitants of the world learn righteousness. I'm going to read that again. It says, when your judgments, so the prophet's speaking, like, when your judgments, speaking about God, when God's judgments are in the earth, the inhabitants of the world learn righteousness. I just thought that was a really interesting verse. It's a really interesting statement by the prophet. So I'd be curious on just what you all think. It might be something to just write a note, journal it, whatever. What does that mean to you? What does that mean? How is that played out? That when God's judgment is present with us, how do we then learn righteousness. What would it take? What kind of judgment would it take for us to move away from unrighteous behavior to righteous behavior? What would it take individually, collectively, to do that? And you can even read the next verse. Read verse 10, and I think verse 10 also can help us to think deeper about that. But I just found that to be a verse that just kind of stuck out. So this is something you can do when you're reading through the Bible: is highlight a verse, think about that verse. What's that verse mean? What's that verse say to you? What's it talking about? I'm not gonna give you an exegete thing about this verse and here's what the scholars say. I'm not. When we read the Bible, it's for us at times to think about what it's saying to us and what it's speaking about to us. So when we get a chance to talk to people about our faith or about Scripture, we get an opportunity to just say what it's saying to us. And that's kind of the beauty, I think, of reading and discussing this. So, well, something for you to think about on chapter 26. Okay, chapter 27. There's this little preamble in 27 that talks about God killing the serpent Leviathan. Leviathan was a mythological Canaanite creature in the sea. The sea, when they talk about the sea in the Hebrew Bible throughout Scripture, it is such an unknown thing. It's a scary thing for the people. Anything that could tame the sea, could quiet the sea, could do something to. You think about Jesus making the nets be filled with fish. Anybody had this kind of authority over the sea, they have the utmost power. They are God. They are the strongest, because the sea was just so mysterious and violent. The only thing that could control the sea is a God. And so for our God to kill the Canaanite powerful sea creature Leviathan would make God just so powerful and amazing to the people. So it has this little preamble in there, in this right before the Scripture. And I just think that's interesting. It's interesting. This is where Scripture and the people of that time, they do not speak of the lack of existence of other gods or other mythological creatures or things like that. They in fact talk about it, but what they say is our God is higher than all those gods. Our God is stronger than all those gods. Our God is more just than all those gods. And so sometimes we try to speak that there is only one God. We are in a monotheistic faith, meaning that we believe in one God. But I would also say, hey, maybe there are these other ones. But for me, there is no God above my God, right? There's no God above the God that I worship on Sundays throughout the week, the God of Jesus. My God is this ultimate God, is my creator, is who I turn to and who I praise and worship. So this is just kind of helps them when they think about this. It elevates the status of the God of Israel above the Canaanites, and why the Canaanites should come over to Israel's side. Come over here. Come be a part of us. We got the strongest God out there. And we still believe this. Hopefully we believe this today, us being Christians. So here you get this little interesting preamble, and I think it's just kind of a neat little thing. Excuse me, I had an eye itch. Neat little thing there in that chapter. Chapter 29, we'll go to chapter 29. It speaks of the siege of Jerusalem, but also about how God will avenge Jerusalem. And I love the imagery in verse 8. So read verse 8. I just kind of love that passage and that imagery. Again, it's a good spot. You can highlight some places here in the Bible. You can highlight things that you find interesting or that you really like, and just see, like, what's that mean? What's it speak to you? How does it stand out for you? So I'll let you read verse 8 and just kind of see that imagery there, but I really love it. Chapter 30, the people here are looking to Pharaoh and not God for protection, and they're not consulting God when it comes to the treaties that they're establishing. They're not inviting God into that work, into their nation to do that work. Now, when we think about this, I would say if I'm a Christian and I'm also a leader of a company, of a church, if I'm a politician, I love baseball. If I'm a GM of a baseball team, uh, I would seek counsel from God at times. I would seek counsel about what to do. I would say I would want to be cautious saying that we have to make our government Christian, because at least in America we honor other religions. But as a Christian, this is just where I go, hey, if you believe in something else, totally fine. You do that. You can call on that God to help advise you, whatever you want. But for me as a Christian, and for other Christians, I would say, hey, yeah, let's consult God. Let's consult prophets, right? I loved hearing recently. I'm not making a political backing by any means, but I just thought it was neat when Kamala Harris went to her minister to seek counsel before she ran for president. What an honor as a minister, just having anybody come to want to seek that kind of counsel, to think highly of their minister in that way, would be amazing. But she sought good Christian counsel, and I think that's important. Who are some good Christian people that you can go to for counsel? For, hey, we get these great opportunities. Are you going and listening to God during those times? Or are you only going to God when times are tough? And sometimes we just do the second. We don't go to God when we get these great opportunities or times are good. And hey, man, I want to make sure I'm doing the right thing here. My heart's in the right place. My mind's in the right place. And I think this is really important. And so I just thought this was an interesting tidbit here. So later in the passage, it does speak of how they have silenced, though, God's prophets. They're not listening to them. And this has caused some oppression, some deceit. And it said, as it said there. So that is... that's something that when we believe God is a just God, a God of liberation, that if we would seek counsel of God, maybe we would change some of our decision making that would allow people to live full or free lives. Verse 18, it says, "There's a chance for restoration for Israel," and we hear here of God's desire for mercy. See, which I love. Like, what are qualities of God? If we want to think about who God is, what's the quality here in the Bible? Here's where you could highlight a little bit. Oh, quality, mercy, right? He desires mercy. You'll hear Jesus in the gospel say, "I desire mercy, not sacrifice." So there's where God's saying, "I desire mercy." Later on, Jesus says it. So this is where we can say, like, again, Jesus reflects that nature of God, and also says, "Who is a God of justice." Right? This is a just God. So think of justice. What is justice to you? You hear a lot of that through the prophets. What's justice? What does it look like? Where are places that you see a lack of justice being happening throughout your communities, throughout the world? Maybe do you see it present in your church in some small ways or big ways? And are those things that you can speak up to try to bring a little more justice to these little areas of life? Is there something that would motivate you in your faith to follow God a little closer by doing that kind of work? So this is where we can look at these justice issues and absolutely support social justice work through Scripture. So absolutely, Isaiah speaks heavily on this. Chapter 32, we'll go to chapter 32. It says it talks about a ruler and kind of ideal qualities. There's a ruler that's going to come about, and ideal qualities that rulers have. That they will favor justice, again, and have righteousness. Again, think about what righteousness would be, not perfection. I don't want to say perfection because we can't attain to that as human beings. But a good leader who is ordained by God, a leader who is blessed by God, will be righteous and will be just. If a leader claims that they are blessed by God or backed by God or sent by God or done whatever, and they lack both of those, they're not, right? If they're not, that they would be making some false statements there, right? And you can see this with how God raises up particular leaders throughout Scripture. Never are these people perfect. Even David, we'll get to David in time, but David is far from perfect. But he is somebody who's constantly seeking God, and he is somebody that has to atone for his mistakes, owns up to them at times. And sometimes he just acts within his own culture. We can look at it now and go, that wasn't right. But David is constantly seeking God for redemption, for forgiveness, and to be the kind of leader that God is calling him to. We can see leaders at times that, yeah, they'll make mistakes. That's going to happen. Do they atone for it? Are they asking for forgiveness? Are they taking ownership? Right? These are qualities we should look for if we want to elect or hire or follow Christian leaders, right? So just something for us. It's a good thing just to kind of like write down. This is where Scripture kind of says you want to find a good Christian leader. Here's two things to kind of look for: righteousness and do they fight for justice, and again, I want to say righteousness does not mean perfection. So trying to understand what righteousness is, look it up, think about it, consider what that means for us in everyday life. Chapter 36, I'm going to skip a couple chapters, go to 36. Jerusalem here is being threatened by the Assyrians. And the words that are being spoken are to mock God. They're being spoken to people who want to defend Jerusalem, and it's being used to mock God. In a sense, I had kind of read in a little bit of a commentary, the Assyrians are using some propaganda to mock God, which I thought was interesting. So, and God isn't going to have that. God ain't going to have that. So we go to chapter 37. This is where King Hezekiah calls on Isaiah and wants to hear about what's going on. And he hears the mocking words regarding God. And he takes this letter and he lays it down at the altar of God so God can read the letter. And God speaks through Isaiah because Hezekiah prayed. Hezekiah was praying. Hezekiah wanted to speak to God about what was going on and asking for deliverance and help. And God heard the prayers and he responds. And God, through the prophet Isaiah, is going to deliver. He's going to protect and deliver them from the Assyrians. So, a good leader like Hezekiah, gets on his knees and consults God in what to do, and will follow through. So this is a part where God wasn't going to be mocked here. We'll skip past 38. We get to chapter 39. And you'll just get some foretelling here about what will happen between Babylon and Israel, and which will occur in years coming, as Hezekiah brings these Babylonian people in and shows them everything they got, and maybe not the smartest idea, Hezekiah, and Isaiah seems shocked by this. He must not have been consulted during this, and maybe a slip up on Hezekiah's part not to consult Isaiah during this. So, and this is where Isaiah ends. This is where our reading ends. But we'll pick back up in Isaiah later on in our Bible reading plan. So keep at it. Keep reading the Bible. Keep doing it. Hope you're enjoying reading the Bible and getting a lot, maybe some help through these videos.